Welcome to Flash Starts Conversations with Innovators. I'm your co host, Charles Stack. I'm here with,
Shannon Lyons.
and today's guest is Tiffany McNamara. She's the Senior Director, Strategic Partnerships and Business Development at Sears ThinkBox, Case Western Reserve University. Welcome, Tiffany.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So, I have a lot of questions, but I want to start out. We'll build in sequence here. So, what's the worst thing that's happened since you've been at Sears ThinkBox?
So I would say the worst thing that happened was we had a industry partner here for the day. They brought in about 40 of their innovators, team from across the globe, actually. And I'm not going to divulge any names, but it was really going well with middle management level team members who then decided to bring in some of the upper level, and I think there was even potentially a C-suite executive there. And they brought them into the prototyping round of this innovation day. So we threw T-shirts on them and put them right onto the prototyping floors here at Sears ThinkBox. And within about 15 minutes, we realized that they had no interest in finishing the product, and we were then, left with how do we recover from that? How do we keep them engaged? How do we get them to understand the importance of innovation and why their teams decide to engage and talk through innovation? And so trying to, as you know, trying to get C-suite and executive levels to understand the importance of innovation is a challenge in and of itself. Then when you're in the middle of showing them why it's so important, and they start getting phone calls and texting, and we realized that we were losing them. So we had to, in that moment, really get them engaged. So we pulled in some students who started asking questions, and it brought them to a different level of engagement. They never did finish their part of the sprint, but they did get some great feedback and interaction with some of our students. But it was one of those days where I left and I needed a nap.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, I've
Yeah.
been to ThinkBox, but I'm sure most of our viewers have not. You want to tell us a little bit about the facility and how it came to
Yeah.
be?
Yes, absolutely. So Sears ThinkBox is on the campus of Case West Reserve University. We are 7 floors, 50,000 square feet of open innovation space. And what that means is anyone in the community is welcome and has access to all the resources here at Sears ThinkBox. All you need to do to come in here and use our space is have some form of ID and sign in, and you're welcome to take advantage of everything that we have here. That comes from support in your ideation process, to space to share ideas, whiteboards, all the way up through prototyping equipment such as 3D printers and laser cutters, to more traditional fabrication equipment, laser cutters, water jet cutters, lathes, a wood shop. And then on floor 6 is where we have our support of the entrepreneurship component, where you can get time with mentors, you can get support in coming up with your minimum viable product. Everything that we can provide you at what stage you're in to get you to the next level lives on this floor. And then finally on floor 7, which we opened in January of 2020, will be where we have space for our startups and some corporate partners.
Cool.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You're good.
Yeah. So, how often do you guys work with outside groups? We like the sprint that you mentioned.
Mhm.
How often have you guys done that, or is that something that you're just starting at Case ThinkBox?
So we've done that pretty much since I started here for almost 3 years ago, and we do wildly different engagements. It's one of those things where people have asked me for the last 3 years, do you have a handout or a flyer or something that tells us what we can partake in as far as these sprints or a day out event? And it's very hard to do because each individual group that comes to us has a really unique idea or a reason for being engaged with ThinkBox. So what we tend to do is give them more examples of what we have done in the past and ways that we can engage with their groups to give them what they're looking for as their whether they're doing a day out for team building or whether they're trying to flex their creative muscle or whether they're trying to convince their C-suite why innovation is so important. We cover all of that.
Oh, wow. That's great. That's an awesome offering.
So, how many students will go through ThinkBox on a daily, weekly, monthly basis?
So we average about 6,000 visits a month. So it's quite a steady stream. We don't include in that number oftentimes tours. It's a little bit difficult to bring in that number. We can count from a different set of data, but we're in now in this actually, and we're going into year 5 in this space. We have really started to see an uptick in our community outreach is really starting to pay, and because we're having more, we've increased from about 15% to 30% community use. So that's been really a great number that we've been striving to increase.
So do you have any specific things that you've done either with the space or with programmings to try to bring together all the different constituents that you support?
Actually, we do. I think one of my favorite things about being a part of this group and this initiative is that being part of a Research One institution and almost 200 years of excellence in education, they still believe in the fact that innovation is important. So here is where we get to do all the stuff that I think the other part of campus might be a little hesitant to try. So my answer, and I say this jokingly, but I'm dead serious, is my answer is almost always yes first. And then we walk away and go, what did we just say yes to? So one of the things that we did most recently is we have this initiative, the Internet of Things initiative, the IoT Collaborative with Cleveland State University. And we also have the Interactive Commons, which is the HoloLens. They have a lot of other projects, but they work with the HoloLens. We recently brought a digital component to ThinkBox, and there's a space dedicated on floor 2 to have somewhat branches of those groups involved with ThinkBox, so that when we've got people coming through that have a product, we can give them support and layer on that digital component to that. And that's been really fun. We didn't have any money to do it. We just had space, and we started asking for equipment and bringing people over. And before you know it, we had students involved in it, and it's really happening organically. And that's my favorite part of being in this space is we can try stuff. And if it doesn't work and if it fails, we're supposed to fail. And when it does work, it's always really phenomenal to see the outcome.
Wow, having that freedom and sort of flexibility. I mean,
Yeah.
that really is what allows startups to grow, and what really the backbone of what innovation looks like is learning from, the pivots and the changes and what didn't work
Right.
out. It's almost as
Right.
important as what did work out.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Right.
So at the risk of being inundated with new companies, what should, like we're here in Cleveland, and there's
Mm-hmm.
thousands of businesses. What would you ask companies, or what would you tell companies that would be a good time for them to connect with you? Like what problems can you solve for them, or what opportunities can you offer them? Give me the sales pitch to business
Oh.
in Cleveland.
Okay, so I would say first of all, they may not even know where they are in the process. I think sometimes the conversation helps them understand at what point they really are. And by what I mean by that is you may have a very active and successful group of innovators within a company doing some new projects or new processes. But as we all know, that if you don't have the support of your executives and if you don't have its own budget, you may not be able to get that business plan together and then actually bring that idea either up through the channels or out into the market within that company. Something as, and I don't use the word basic, meaning it doesn't matter, but something as simple as getting the group in and just diving into what it means to go through innovation, talk about how that process looks. And similar to what I believe you're all doing there is we don't subscribe to one particular format. Obviously, when you work with different companies, they have different approaches. But oftentimes you've got a company who's been working in one area of innovation and we expose them to another one. And that is sometimes you combine those two, you take bits and pieces of that, and then you go to the next level to see, is this something that could be working for what you're trying to accomplish? But I think the biggest message that I try to get through when we talk to our corporate partners is you have to do your best to get a champion within that company that's high enough that can pull the purse strings and get this idea in the right hands so that it just doesn't die in that group, because that's what happens, and it's so deflating when a group gets very excited about something. They see the true potential, but there just wasn't that right champion that could put money and support behind it.
So I think it's interesting, we're on the exact same page around different methodologies to solve different problems. because
Mm-hmm.
a lot of our engagements over the last, I don't know, 20 years between the two is there's
Mm-hmm.
a presupposition that an organization is going to use a certain methodology.
Yeah.
And there's also groups of consultants that will have a particular methodology that is usually patented and
Yeah.
highly vaunted. But
Right.
I think it depends on, like you said, it depends on what the problem is you're trying to solve. So one of
Right.
the things that we did before this live conversation is talk about specific methodologies, and you flagged some that you actually did use.
Mm-hmm.
Can you, if I mention them, can you talk
Mm-hmm.
about where you might use a certain methodology?
Sure.
Like
Sure.
we'll start with design thinking. Where does that,
Mm-hmm.
where in the process or where in a scenario does that fit best?
It's interesting, given that ThinkBox, and I say this so much that my team, I think they roll their eyes at me, ThinkBox is very much of a startup. We were seated, and even from a physical standpoint, we're still building out our space. There are often times that we ourselves will employ design thinking in each edition of a program or a floor in trying to decide really how to best serve our users and getting the feedback from those that are using other parts of this space. So we subscribe and use at ThinkBox several of these also based on, at what point we are in our own growth. And what's helpful about that is that when we then take those out into the world, we've got really great examples, and where we have screwed up along the way here in really major ways. But the beauty is, because we're an open access space and we have users that are coming in, we're still providing a service to the community. We know that we've screwed up and we've seen where we've made mistakes along the way, but we're still providing a service. And I think that's an important message when we're working with others that are trying to innovate.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, how about sort of pitch? Do you guys use pitch at all within ThinkBox to come up with new ideas?
So as you know, we're working with entrepreneurs specifically on floor 6, but there's a lot of times that these pitch sessions really provide value for those entrepreneurs in more than just giving them an opportunity to win the award or go on to the next stage. Putting a pitch together means that you have to know what you're talking about. And you sometimes get 2 or 3 slides into it and you uncover the fact that maybe your message isn't as clear because there may be still some bumps in the road that you haven't worked out with your team. So even the process of building the pitch, in addition to practicing and presenting the pitch, is truly valuable. And I think one of the reasons that I enjoy so much in preparing with these students for these pitches is the actual process can be very uncovering for their business plan.
The other thing you flagged was the business model canvas, and
Mm-hmm.
as we mentioned before we started this call, I'm actually going to be at ThinkBox this afternoon doing a business model canvas workshop with a class from the business school. Now,
Mm-hmm.
do you find that works well with corporations? Have you ever used the business model canvas with a full-blown corp?
No, I don't. I haven't, and I don't think any of my colleagues here at ThinkBox have. It can be quite cumbersome. I think there are components of it that are very valuable, but I think the business model canvas as a whole is something in this space to be aware of, understand it, see where it, in particular places that it can be applied. But to me, given the new I guess new approaches that are out there, it's one that I don't use as often. I refer to it from time to time because I do like, if I'm stuck on something, I'll plug it into the different different options, but it's not something that we employ very often here. How about your group? Am I allowed to ask questions?
You're lucky. Because we historically have worked a lot with startups, we use business model canvas, but we do it very lightly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There can be an obsession with it that we see, and it's just not appropriate. I think as far as using it for a corporation, I think it fits. But you don't want to belabor the point. You want to say who are your customers,
Yeah.
what's the
Right.
value you're delivering, how you're going to deliver that value, and just
Right.
go through the checkbox.
Yeah. And I think without having
Right.
validation tactics, I mean, that's really the kind of grit and sort of substance of a business model canvas. It's hypotheses, but let's make those hypotheses into
Right.
something that are more actionable. And so, yeah, so we really have focused more on the tactics and getting out of the building and going to talk to either customers or partners or people in your value
Right.
chain to really understand
Yeah.
why we think that way.
Well, and I think that's probably why we then, in that case, would probably more default to the design thinking process, because, that's really heavy on that. And that's where I think, again, when I say I personally don't subscribe to one. If I run an innovation session, you may find 3 or 4 of them spattered in there, just for the fact that trying to get the message across. You read the group to see how they're receiving it. I'll give you an example. We took a group to China. This has been about a year ago this past July, taught the design thinking, human-centered design. And I came into a classroom of about 20 students who, I don't know if you know much about education in China, but it's very deliberate, very literal. And here I am bringing in human-centered design approach, to a product. And it was fascinating to watch, trying to tell the theory of it. But then once you start taking that rapid prototyping and applying it to, questioning partners in the classroom to see, what do you think about this? Would you use this? How quickly it brought down the barriers and had them understand the process of innovation by actually seeing the prototypes and how that affects the end user. It was really a fabulous experience to watch it go from theory into practice. You don't see it as much here when we're all open to that and we come to ThinkBox because we want that. But when you take it out to someone who they're very much, it's very clear what they're looking for, and that's the right answer. To take them to 5 wrong answers first was really fun to watch.
That's really cool. So I started with the worst day. What do you think's been your big? This will be the last question. What do you think?
Okay.
What do you think's been the biggest success for you and ThinkBox in the past 3 years?
Wow. The biggest success. Well, I think at this point, what has been really phenomenal is we're at a point now where when I first started here, we didn't quite know what we were doing, and we were fine with that because we knew that we had a goal and we had a mission. I think we're at a point now where we're actually starting to build processes and have a strategy and think about ways to employ what we've learned in a way that provides even better services and more services. I think we're to know that we've crossed that mark where it's no longer running around trying stuff. I guess we're still doing that, but we have more of an approach in that let's build on this process that we have known to be successful, learn from the mistakes, and that we're now at a point where we can be a little bit more strategic and thoughtful. It's been really rewarding, and I'm excited to see what the next phase comes because we have a solid foundation now.
Well, I think that brings us to the end here. I want to thank you again, Tiffany, for coming. Thanks everybody for watching this. This is Flash Starts. You can contact us at our website or the email that's up on the screen. And until next time, sayonara.